Hi, my name is Paige. Welcome to my channel. So for the past few months, I feel like I've basically just been reading books through audio, and it's a new thing for me. Over the past few years, I wasn't really sure if I was good at listening to audiobooks just because I have a hard time paying attention and my listening comprehension has not always been the greatest, but I have definitely hit a point where I feel like I am really good at listening to audiobooks, and I do have some preferences of narrators, and I figured I would just put together a list of, I don't know, maybe 20 or so books that I felt like were really good audiobooks that I would definitely recommend because the narrator was really good or the story was just super compelling. And none of these are very long. I have all the times listed down so that you know how long these audiobooks are. And yeah, I just figured I'll give you some recommendations if you want to listen to an audiobook in your near future. Is this in any way structured? No. And do I have to put this video out tomorrow? Yes. So mind me, as I am a little bit chaotic. I also have books that I'm unhauling everywhere, and I have just a lot going on right now, so we're trying our best. Here's book number 1. All Quiet on the Western Front by Erich Maria Remarque. This is narrated by Frank Muller, and it's about 6 hours and 55 minutes. I, as a disclaimer, usually read my audiobooks on like 2.3 speed. Sometimes I'll knock it down if the narrator has an accent or the narrator already speaks pretty quickly. So I think I read this one around 1.8 to 2 times speed, and it was really short. It was really quick. It's not a cheerful, happy read. This is about a man during wartime in, I want to say, World War I, and it's heartbreaking. It's just very devastating, very dark, not hopeful. So not like a light-hearted, fluffy little read, but it is a quick, beautifully written read about war and death and trauma and awful things that happen. So do with that what you will, but I do recommend this one. Another quick read is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. This is narrated by Olivia Song, and the audiobook is 11 hours and 11 minutes. And this follows a woman named Lily, and she has 2 relationship timelines. So we're reading her diary entries of her and her first love, Atlas, and then in her adult life we're meeting her and her boy guy, what is his name, Ryle and their relationship, and just kind of the differences between the 2 relationships and what she's learning. And the author's note at the end of this is really what like broke my soul and made me sob, but it was a really quick, easy read. I liked the voices that were in this one. I just felt like I was compelled to read it the entire time. I didn't really want to put it down, so I would recommend this one for a very quick read, and I liked Olivia Song's voice. Okay, this is solely an audiobook recommendation, but we have Aristotle and Dante book 1 and book 2. And this is a little bit tricky to recommend also because I know some people don't like Lin-Manuel Miranda's voice, but if you are a Hamilton fan and if you do like Lin-Manuel Miranda's voice, he narrates both of these books and they are very quick. This one is 7 hours and 29 minutes and this one is 10 hours and 3 minutes. So when you read them on 2 times speed, I mean, you could probably finish both books in a single day if you have the time available. But yeah, this is a bit tricky to recommend because I didn't love either of these books. I thought they were fine. I thought they were a little pretentious at some points, but they were okay. I did like Lin-Manuel Miranda's voice though, because I am a Hamilton fan. So do with it what you will. If you want to read them, you could probably read them very, very quickly. It is just pretty YA. I think it's set in the 80s. 2 young boys figuring out their sexuality. It's cute. It's not the best, but the audiobook was nice. I really did like it. For a nonfiction recommendation, we have Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb, and the narrator is Brittany Pressley, and the audiobook is 14 hours and 21 minutes, but I just flew through this one. I felt like it was so easy to read. I really enjoyed Brittany Presley's narration. I just thought that she had such a soothing voice. It was really nice. So this one is about a therapist experience in her own therapy after a breakup that doesn't go very well for her, and also her experiences as a therapist and the stories that kind of like touched her and moved her. So I had a really good time reading it. It is pretty emotional, at least I found it emotional, but I cry over everything, so that's subjective. And I just thought it was a really nice read. It was just one of those books that you can put on, kind of do your own thing throughout the day. You don't have to super pay attention, but the stories were just really, really captivating to me. So I would definitely recommend that one. Next up, we have Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake, and this was narrated by Kristen DiMecurio. It's an 11-hour and 41-minute audiobook, and I just remember listening to it at work and feeling like the spicy scenes. Her voice just added a different element to it. I found her voice very nice to listen to. Just one of those voices that you kind of go, okay, that's a good voice. But the book itself is a romance between Delilah and a woman named Claire who knew each other when they were in high school, but Claire didn't necessarily leave the best impression on Delilah because of her friendship with Delilah's stepsister that was a little bit contentious, I would say. And so when they're reunited, Delilah kind of has ulterior motives at the beginning, but then everybody just starts to kind of see eye to eye on a lot of things. So it's a cute story. It's a really quick read. But yeah, I do remember listening to the audiobook thinking, whoa, I like her voice a lot. I feel like I'm always recommending Daisy Jones and the Six, but this is like the #1 recommended audiobook I feel like I've ever found. Anytime I've ever looked for audiobook suggestions, this one is always in there because it does have a full cast of characters. Every single character has a different narrator and it's told in interview format, so it brings every single character to life because you get to hear the way they share their thoughts, and I don't know, it's just really, really, really well done. If you ever pick up Daisy Jones and the Six and don't pick up the audiobook, that's a shame. You highly recommend picking up the audiobook before you ever touch a physical copy. It's just such a good one to listen to. I love it. It's so good. And something that I'm really thankful for this book is that there's not a lot of cringy like music moments, where that's something, I don't know if I'm an outlier to this, but when there is a book that features like musicians or songwriters or something, you always get a huge chunk of their songs in the middle of the book. And I was real worried at the first time I listened to this that we'd had to listen to somebody singing a song in this, but that does not happen. So that's something that's also a pro in my eyes about this book, because even though it's about musicians, we don't have cringy lyric moments. Maybe that's just me. Next up, we have Song of Achilles by Madeline Muller, and this was narrated by Frazer Douglas. It's an 11-hour and 15-minute audiobook. I don't think I said how long Daisy Jones was, but that's only 9 hours. So anyway, back to this one. This is not one of my favorite books. I honestly didn't love it, but I did enjoy it. And the audiobook narrator was very nice to listen to. He just made the lyrical writing feel like a song. I don't know how he did it, but his voice was just so soothing to listen to. I really enjoyed his voice, and I think his audiobook narration really stands out to me because after I read this book, I went onto TikTok and found a lot of fan edits, and there were a few of the like really memorable quotes using his audio to make like fan TikToks. So those really stuck out to me just because there are a lot of heartbreaking quotes, and hearing them in his voice, it's just so good. It's just so good. So even though I didn't love this book, the audiobook is really good to listen to. It's not very long and it just kind of sounds like a dream. It really does sound like a dream. Then we have Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. This is narrated by Suzy Jackson, and the audiobook is 15 hours and 28 minutes. So this is one of the longer ones on my list today. But I just think she does such a good job with these characters. I felt like she really brought Spencer to life. So this one is about a young girl named Spencer whose father, when she was younger, turned against his piloting crew and was branded a traitor, and he had to be shot down. So not everyone on this planet that Spencer is living with kind of sees her as a coward's daughter, but she wants to become a pilot, and she also wants to prove that her father wasn't really a traitor. And it's just about her journey into becoming a pilot and fighting these outer space forces, and it's just such a fun story. This first book is so good, and I really just enjoyed Suzy Jackson's narration. I read this book first without the audiobook, and I felt like the audiobook really added another element. It really brought Spencer to life for me, and there are some other characters that I think Suzy Jackson does a really fun job narrating, so I would highly recommend this book for sure. Then we have The Grace Year by Kim Ligget, and this is narrated by, I just read her name, Emily Shaffer, and it's an 11-hour and 42-minute audiobook. And I have just recently started recommending this book because I read it a couple months ago and I really enjoyed it. It's like The Handmaid's Tale meets the Salem Witch Trials meets the Hunger Games, about these young women who live in a town where the men believe that basically that the women are witches and they have to go out on their 16th year of life and release their magic into the world before they can come back and live in society, because women are a danger to men. And it's frustrating and tense and it's heartbreaking too, and I really enjoyed it. The ending is something that I know a lot of people don't like, but I personally did. I felt like it suited the story really well. And with the audiobook that I listened to, there is an interview with the author at the end that I really enjoyed listening to as well. It's just a fun, easy, almost nostalgic feeling book. It definitely brought me back to how I felt reading The Hunger Games. I just really enjoyed this one, so yeah, I would definitely recommend. Next up, we have Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell, and this was narrated by Raphael Corkhill, and the audiobook is 15 hours and 24 minutes. So this is my second longest on this recommendation list, but this is such a fun time. This is about two men named Kiam and Jinan, and they are forced to be in an arranged marriage because Jinan's previous spouse has passed away, and in order to uphold a treaty they have to have these two men be married because they're from separate planets. And there's a lot of politics in this one, but it's also a very cute romance in the background with these two who don't have a lot of self-confidence, and it's just them both thinking that the other person doesn't want to be married to them, but then both also really liking the other person. It's very sweet, very fun, and I really enjoyed the audiobook narrator and the different voices that he gave each character. I felt like I could really distinguish who was who, and I just thought he had a really nice voice too. He's one of those voices that I kind of went, yeah, I could listen to you narrate quite a few other books. I even looked up other books that he's done. Don't currently recognize a lot of them, but I would definitely listen to another one of his audiobooks in the future. At this point, I feel like I'm legally obligated to talk about a TJ Klune book or series in one of my videos. Have I ever made a video without talking about one of his books? I don't know, probably not, but The Extraordinaries series starts off with The Extraordinaries, and the entire series is narrated by Michael Leslie. The first book is 13 hours and 13 hours and 3 minutes, and the other ones are about the same. I did not write these ones down, but these are so much fun. Michael Leslie is an amazing audiobook narrator. I don't even have the words. He just brought these characters to life. If you haven't already heard me talk about this series a gajillion billion times, this is about a world where superheroes are real, and we have our main character Nicholas Bell, who is obsessed with a superhero named Shadowstar. He writes fan fiction, and he ends up getting mixed up in Shadowstar and another superhero, Pyrostorm's shenanigans, and it is just chaos. It is chaos, and I love every single moment of it. And the different voices that Michael Leslie gives to these characters, just it's perfection, to the point where when we do finally meet the superheroes and they are in and out of their disguises, there is different voices that he uses for them in their costumes and out of them, and it's just so fun. I freaking love this series, and I love Michael Leslie's narration. He also narrated quite a few other TJ Klune books, but I know he narrated the Lightning Struck Heart series. I've listened to parts of book 1, and it's fucking hilarious, you guys. It is so funny, and the way that he makes all of these characters come to life is perfection. So if you want the more YA version of his audiobooks, I would go with this series. If you want the more adult version of his audiobooks, I would go with the Lightning Struck Heart series, but they are so good. They are so good. Michael Leslie is fantastic. Another recent read for me is Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. This is about a young woman who becomes a nanny, and she's in like a pretty modern, smart home that things start to go very strangely at night. And during her time as a nanny, one of the children ends up dead, and she's trying to prove that she was not the murderer for this child. And the audiobook is narrated by Imogen Church. It's a 12-hour and 13-minute audiobook. I listened to this on a rainy day at work, and the vibes were so perfect, and this book was so damn good. It was so good. Imogen Church just really brought every single character the perfect voice. Her narrations of different moments were things in the attic were creaking and spooky. She just had perfect sound effects and timing, and she did such a good job. So if you have not read Turn of the Key, definitely listen to the audiobook for this one. It was so good. I obsessed with this. As I was putting this list together, I noticed that I had a few overlapping narrators, so I'm going to recommend these two books together: Anxious People by Frederick Bachman and The Push by Ashley Adrian. And they are both narrated by Maren Ireland. This one is 9 hours and 53 minutes, and this one is 8 hours and 38 minutes. They're definitely very different books. This is about a group of characters after they have been held hostage from a bank robbery gone wrong, basically trying to figure out who this bank robber was and why they robbed this bank. This one is about a mother who has a daughter that she never really connected to. Something just felt off with their relationship, and then later she has a son that she does connect with, and there are some very creepy things that happen with her daughter, and you're just trying to figure out what is going on between this mother-daughter relationship, and why was she more connected to her son than her daughter. It was captivating. This one, heartbreaking and moving and funny and totally different vibes, but I feel like the fact that I can recommend both of these audiobooks says a lot about our narrator's voice. She just really did a great job of capturing the feelings of the moments. I felt sad, and I felt stressed, and I felt anxious when I was reading this, and I felt terrified at moments when I was reading this one. So I feel like Maren Ireland does a great job with setting the atmosphere in her narration. So I would definitely recommend checking one of these out. And I feel like I've recently just found one of my favorite audiobook narrators. I don't know if it's just because of the books that she picks out or that she is able to have the opportunity to read, but Educated by Tara Westover, Book Lovers by Emily Henry, Maybe Another Life by Taylor Jenkins Reid were all narrated by Julia Whalen. And Maybe in Another Life, 9 hours and 9 minutes. Book Lovers, 11 hours and 23 minutes. Educated, 12 hours, 10 minutes. They're all pretty short, pretty quick reads. But Julia Whalen, her voice is just so good. I even think she just came out recently with a book about audiobook narrators falling in love that I have to pick up. I just love her voice, and I am so excited to read that book. It sounds so cute. Sorry for that mini tangent. Let's get back to why I like her books. They're just so soothing. There is something just so calming about her voice, about her characters. I have listened to a few of her audiobooks where I feel like her male characters are not always the most distinct, but her female characters, I can always just perfectly picture what they look like, and I just get really captured in her stories, and I have cried over so many of the stories that she has narrated. She has narrated so many, and I highly recommend, if you're not interested in some of these books, to go and look at Julia Whalen's backlist and see the books that she has narrated, because they are so good. But for Educated, it's about a young woman's journey growing up in a kind of doomsday cult where she didn't get to have the chance to have any education, but as she got older and started to become her own person, she was able to go and escape her abusive family and find education for herself. And that was a really good one to read. It has a few jarring moments where there is the use of the N-word that I wasn't a big fan of listening to. The tale overall about this woman's journey, this memoir, was really moving. I did enjoy that. For Maybe in Another Life, this is about a woman named Hannah who moves back to LA after her life kind of hit a bump in the road, and when she is in LA, she is staying with her best friend Gabby, and she has an ex-boyfriend named Ethan who she had met in high school. And one night, on her first night back in LA, she decides to either go home with Gabby and just hang out at home, or go home with Ethan and kind of rekindle their romance. And it's the two diverging paths of each choice that she made and what her life would look like if she made one choice versus the other. So love this book, love this book. And for book lovers, this might be one of my favorite romances of all time. It's about a woman named Nora who is a literary agent, and she kind of gets off on the wrong foot with this editor named Charlie. But fast forward a couple of years, her sister wants to take a vacation to a small town, and Charlie ends up being at that small town as well, and things kind of heat up from there. and it's so cute. Charlie is perfection. I am in love with him, but this is just a fun, simple, easy read, and I would definitely recommend. But I just overall recommend Julia Whelan's writing. Whelan? You know, as many times as I've heard her say her name in her narrations, I clearly can't remember what it is. I can't hold up all the books. But I hope this video helped you find one audiobook that you might be interested in listening to. I do feel like all of these are pretty quick, easy reads. They're mostly pretty fluffy, light, happy reads with a few outliers here and there, but I would definitely recommend a lot of these audiobook narrators if you want to check them out. I will try and make sure I list every book in the description, as well as their narrators as well, if you want to try and check out some of their other backlist works, if that would be something that you're interested in. So if you have made it this far in the video, go ahead and leave me the headphone emoji, and on Friday I should be putting out a video where I am reading books by certain audiobook narrators, so I hope you subscribe so that you can see that, and I will see you in my next video, which should be out very shortly. All right, bye.